Welcome to the Lend Academy podcast, episode number 246. This is your host, Peter Renton, founder of Lend Academy and co-founder of the LendIt Fintech Conference. Welcome to a special edition of the Lend Academy podcast. We're here today with two of my colleagues. Why don't you guys go and introduce yourself? Bo?
Hi, I'm Bo Brustkern, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of LendIt Fintech.
And Todd?
Todd Anderson, Chief Product Officer, LendIt Fintech.
Okay, so we've got this special edition. Obviously, if you're listening to this, we're also recording a video that will be posted on YouTube. Actually, before you listen to this, it will have already been posted. So today we are talking about LendIt Fintech Digital, and this is a new initiative that we have here at LendIt Fintech. And maybe, Bo, why don't you get us started with just talking about, what is LendIt Fintech Digital?
LendIt Fintech Digital is a community. It is a response to the conditions we're in currently, but it is designed to outlive our current situation. And it's a gathering place for leaders, for innovators, and for the entire community, which we loosely define, we call it the fintech community. I a lot of times call the innovators in financial services, but it's a huge community and we feel really attached to it. And that's what we're building.
And so why did we decide to do this?
I think we've all felt that this is more, LendIt Fintech is more than just an events company. We've talked about ourselves as a media company. We've talked about ourselves as the voice of the fintech community. We just identify with much more than the fact that we've done historically about 3 big event shows a year where we gather physically and we create a lot of magic inside the fintech community. But, it feels like, now's the time when we can actually do more than that. We should be doing more than that. Our audience is eager for more than that. And so really it's just a response to the times and to our own identity.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And then maybe Todd, we can start with you then. So who is the LendIt community? Who is our target audience?
So the LendIt community is, about 35 to 40,000 strong. When you look at the most, high level view of our lists, and, within that we have, the fintech entrepreneurs, the digital banking and banking leaders, investors that invest in the space, both equity and debt side, and then the service providers that service these different types of companies. And what we've seen, in particular recently, as even before we've launched LendIt Fintech Digital, we've been doing webinars and virtual panels, and we've seen a ton of interest. We've had over more than 4,000 registrations for those sessions that have preceded the launch of LendIt Fintech Digital. And it's a community that we've always said is driven by connections and content. And those are the two things that we're looking to bring to the community over LendIt Fintech Digital. And so you'll see the connections happen. And this is not meant to be a 2-day event or a 1-day event. This is meant to be a consistent offering that you can come to every week and see something that's fresh, that's quality, and that speaks to you, whether you're in the bank, you're an investor, or you're a fintech entrepreneur.
Okay. So then, I feel like part of what LendIt has become known for is, we've had these, large events in the US, and particularly, and obviously we've had Europe, we've had China, we've had Latin America, and obviously the great thing about doing things digitally is that you can, that there are no geographical boundaries anymore, and I feel like that's something that is one of the great benefits, that there may be someone in, who is in a remote part of Eastern Europe who decides they can't really afford to travel, but they can come and join this community. So maybe Bo, turn to you and say when we've been thinking about this. Obviously, we've maybe you can talk about the origins of when we started thinking about this, and then, because I know it's been a while since we've had many conversations about this over the years, but and talk about sort of how we wanted this to be different to what's out there today.
Yeah, sure. The first conversation I remember, and I remember it very clearly, and there may have been some before that, but Joy Schwartz, who's our president, and I were in London at a bar. No, it was a pub, and we were talking about how to think differently about what we're doing, and we the way that we talked about it was really in business and commercial terms. We talked about the membership model and all this stuff, and we came back with these great ideas, but the four of us, the three here, they're speaking here plus Joy, we kept kind of running up against this boundary of what's the catalyst, what gets us to a point where people agree that this is the time, this is the moment to come together online, and I think we found our catalyst, and so that's the first I remember of it, and it did iterate. I remember, at a lot of our offsite meetings and strategy meetings, we've continued to think about the community and the additional offerings that we can provide. Last year, let me just riff a little bit on the roundtables thing. Last year, I spent 2 different segments of time. They were 12 days each, and I went to 8 cities each time, and hosted 9 roundtables each time, and they were each in a different geography. One was Latin America, one was Europe. They're incredibly valuable, and that was part of the effort. It was part of the effort to build community. And yet, what you're pointing out, Peter, is we don't need to get on an airplane to do that. I mean, we can host a roundtable right here at LendIt Fintech Digital and have a very similar response, and connect the central bankers in Lithuania with the fintechs in the United States or with LATAM. That's a really powerful thing, and
it's something that we get quite often from different members of our community, whether it's an investor asking for an intro to a startup asking for an intro to an investor, or kind of, what connection do we have that we can help someone get an into someone who then gets a further in? That's, kind of as you go up the food chain, do you guys have a connection here? And so those things combined with some of the broader thinking that Bo was talking about kind of makes you think, how can we expand beyond just 3 physical events per year, but how can we maybe put together an offering that's every day or every other day, where people can gather and look to move their business forward. And so I think that's also part of it. And to be honest, the impetus, I mean, putting 3 large events together is not easy. And so it takes time. And we've just kept running also into roadblocks of, all right, we need to plan Europe or LATAM or USA. And now with a little bit of breathing room, because obviously we're still having those in-person events, I think it gives us a little bit of that initial runway we need to kind of get things going, which we think will then, kind of let it take off and, really start, the community that we want to build.
Right. And we obviously don't want to downplay the importance of the in-person events. I think we all agree that there is a reason that events get large and are very, very popular. Is because it really is a very efficient and great way to do business. But given where we are today and the fact that we don't know how long this is going to last, and people are hungering for community right now where they can connect with people and where they can learn. And so I think, as I say, this is
change is happening so rapidly. I mean, part of the conversation is we can't wait till September. We're gonna have a great event in September. There's gonna be thousands of people there. We're really looking forward to that, but we can't wait till then to have the answers that we need right now. Yeah,
I mean, it's funny because particularly in some of the verticals we see, I mean, things are changing every day. And I've been recording podcasts. I had a couple of podcasts on the small business side where I recorded them, and then a week later when they were published, a bunch of the content was out of date, and that was 1 week. And
Well, I mean, even normally, Peter, how many times during our agenda calls do we say to each other, even before COVID and Corona and the current crisis, do we say, will this be relevant in 6, 8, 10, 12
right.
weeks? And so not only are things more rapidly changing today because of what's going on, but things have constantly in financial services and fintech been rapidly changing the last few years. And it's, as someone who reads as much as you and I and Bo do, it's hard to keep up on a normal basis. So we're trying to bring that to the community so they can better position themselves on the off months that we don't have events, and kind of lead up to those big in-person events where you can just get so much done.
And it cracks open the conversation, right? I mean, we can bat about ideas. You guys have great ideas. You are always coming up with amazing stuff. We lead the industry, no doubt. I can say this because I'm not on the content and journalism team. I can brag about you guys. You're great at what you do, but can we introduce more voices into that conversation? Can we use this as I don't want to call it a farm system, but it is. I mean, we can introduce, we can experiment, we can play with ideas, and some of them are going to be amazing in the moment, and they'll play well in June of 2020, and that moment will be gone. And by September, it's something different, and we'll put that on stage. But we will have learned something along the way and invited the entire community to participate.
Right. Not only that, I feel like there's sometimes you see really big news in the industry, and while we might cover it in a story, we can't really dive as deeply as you could in if you have like a 1 hour session digging into it. And one of the things that I love is that we'll be able to be very responsive now in case as something big happens, and there's going to be lots of big stories this year. Let's face it, there already has been, and there's going to be many, many more big stories, and we'll be able to react and put together something pretty quickly and get it out there for our community. But anyway, I want to dig into the kinds of offerings that we have, because obviously this is not just a bunch of webinars that we're putting together. And I want to maybe, Bo, if you could just take us through the different types of offerings that we're going to have for the community.
Yeah, we counted at least 7 last night when we were thinking through it. So I know I'm gonna need your help on this, but okay, there are 2 types of roundtables. So that's 2, the open and closed. Open is kind of a cool format where we get 6 or 8 people to engage in a roundtable, and then we invite an audience to watch it. That's actually going to be super interesting. Closed roundtable, no audience, no recording, modified Chatham House rules, much more of a peer sharing session. Okay, so that's 2. Workshops we talked about. What else, Peter? I'm only on number 3. We got.
Okay, well, we do have the traditional webinar.
Traditional
right?
webinars.
Do you have Todd probably has a list in front of him.
We'll have news roundup sessions with the Peter and the content team, myself, Ryan,
right.
Bo on occasion, each Thursday. So we'll do kind of a look at the news that happened in the previous week. We will have webinars and virtual panels. We'll certainly have those. Q&As, kind of ask me anything type sessions.
One-on-one networking.
Yep, and one-on-one networking.
Yep, which we won't have right out of the gate. Teaser, it's coming, and it's going to be awesome. But it'll be just for the LendIt FinTech digital community.
We'll have
and new idea. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say what we're calling in plain English. So it's more of a look at, say, something like decentralized finance or cryptocurrencies, central bank digital currencies, kind of how experts on that can then explain it to the community in layman's terms and easier to digest terms. Mm-hmm. And then what we're calling a community forum or town hall type sessions as well. And so it's I think the big difference will be the different types of formats. So we will do various formats. It won't just be static. It won't be the same thing every week. And I think the other thing is, and we've seen this early on in our webinars and our virtual panels, is we want the community involved. So we don't want people to sit, listen, maybe type in a question or two. We want people to raise their hands. We want people to, shout and interrupt and talk and exchange ideas that is helpful for both sides and moves the industry, their companies, everyone forward. Because as we're finding out, not only from watching those who are taking care of the crisis right now, but we need to essentially work as an industry together to move the industry forward. I mean, after 2008, 2009, there was, kind of that fintech term started. Lenders kind of filled the space, and there's going to be more of that after this. And so, but we can't leave the current companies that have come out of that initial financial crisis behind. And so how do we work on those two groups together? And we're hopeful that this type of venue can help, set the stage to move the industry as a whole forward. And so that's kind of some of the thinking behind this when we're talking about all these different formats as well.
Okay, and yeah, I think one other thing I want to add here, because we just were discussing this morning, is that we're going to have sort of what do we call it? A podcast prep.
Podcast prep with Peter Renton.
Yes, because I usually do all this prep by myself. We thought let's actually have this. When we have upcoming guests, have the community involved and actually suggesting questions and that kind of thing that we can bring into and have the community sort of more involved in these podcast sessions. So, and
the community will get first access to the podcast. Right. There'll be video of the podcast. So we're trying to beef up, Peter's already stellar reputation on the podcast, and give our community a bit more input into it, as well as some early access to it.
Mm-hmm. And then what I was going to jump in and say is, in the lead up to the launch, so we've been building this platform in the background. We reached out to a number of speakers that have taken the stage in the past and asked them for content suggestions. We had 240, I think, suggestions, right in that range of here's my name, here's my contact information, this is what we need to talk about right now, and this is what I want to talk about right now, or this is how I can contribute. And then and so we're awash with ideas, which is wonderful, and we want to proliferate. We want these voices to be up there sharing. Now, at the bottom of every page on LendIt Fintech Digital, there's going to be a link called Submit a Talk for Consideration. So we're continuing to gather ideas, and we'll be percolating those up and launching them. So what starts with, a bolus of really great content. I know we're going to talk about that soon, Peter. I know that's one of your questions, but it starts with that, is going to continue with more that's produced and sort of thought up by our team, and also a lot more that's produced outside of our team, which is super exciting.
Right. And so the first day of LendIt Fintech Digital, as far as content goes, is going to be May 13th. We chose that day because that was going to be the original dates of our USA event that we unfortunately had to postpone. So we thought, let's at least set aside put that marker in the sand. The people who were planning, and we had thousands of people planning on coming to New York in May. Now they can actually sit in the comfort of their own home and devour and consume our content. So let's talk about, like, in those first days, who are some of the names? Maybe Todd, you can give us some of the big names that and some of the topics that we're covering initially.
Sure. So on the 13th, to start with, we will kick off with Steve McLaughlin, FT Partners, and he's going to be covering raising money and fintech M&A in kind of the post-COVID world and how that universe is changing. Steve's one of the leaders in the market, the only dedicated fintech investment bank. So it'd be great to get Steve's perspective, considering all the different companies that he covers and touches. And
he's an industry legend these days.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he is, it's amazing. Like, he seems to be in just about every deal these days. So anyway.
Exactly. And then we're going to move into a couple of sessions that are going to look at first consumer lending and Perry over at DVO1, Perry Rabar, who's been putting out a biweekly report of kind of the trends in consumer lending. It's a must read right now, as Peter would say. And I think that you'll get a really, really good insight into how consumer loans are currently performing. Perry's going to be joined by an investor. After that, we'll move into what has been a really hot topic is the PPP. And so we first covered the PPP right around the time it was launching. I think it was the day of April 3rd, right around that time. So we're going to bring a panel back and kind of take a look at how much it's helped small businesses. They've had to, add a second tranche to it, how that's gone. There's been plenty of speed bumps along the way, but, the consumer and small business lending markets are really core to our community. So covering both of those are very, very important to not only us, but to those that will be signing up for LendIt Fintech Digital. And then to round out day one is one of the smartest people in fintech, and that's Mike Cagney of Figure. And so he's going to be talking about creating more stable sources of capital in kind of uneasy and crisis times. Mike's been a pioneer in fintech for quite some time. He is Figure. He started SoFi. So it's a perfect way to end day one of LendIt Fintech Digital. Day two, we're going to have a few different speakers. We're going to touch on digital banking in a panel, talking with MoneyLion, Mambu, Sunrise Bank. So we're going to be talking a little digital bank, infrastructure of banking, as well as incumbent banking. Will Beeson of Rebank will join us as moderator for that session. And then we're going to move into two sessions that will round out the day. Sandy Kemper, C2FO, is one of the biggest supply chain finance companies in the world. And he's going to be talking about kind of an alternative to all that government capital that can help prop up small business and kind of save markets. And that's essentially faster payments to small businesses, creating funds to give to the larger corporates so they can then pay smaller companies invoices immediately, which would then solve the liquidity crisis, because most companies issue an invoice 60 to 90 days. They wait for payment. And then one of our favorites of all time, Scott Penberthy, who's the director of applied AI at Google. He'll be back talking about making sense of unstructured data. And Scott was one of the most highly rated speakers at all of our events combined. He's certainly one of Bo's favorites, and we'll be really interested to see, because he's going to be talking a lot about kind of how he's helping banks and different companies make sense of the information overload that's happening right now, and so it'll be really interesting to talk to him and hear directly from Google, which is obviously one of the leading tech companies in the world.
Yeah, and we also should point out that this is just the opening 2 days. We've also got coming shortly after that, the following week, we'll have the godfather of fintech himself, Ron Suber, will be joining us for an open roundtable type discussion. We will have Joanne Barefoot as well joining us. And I know there's many more. I'm looking
we'll
at
have a panel of leading venture capitalists who talk about how they're handling and helping current portfolio companies, how they're looking ahead, when do they start looking at new investment opportunities, and community banks also, which could be, when all said and done, could be one of the biggest winners coming out of the crisis. Is banking, while it's going more digital, but is that smaller, more personalized bank able to help customers in a time of crisis when the big, large banks are kind of overrun with inquiries? The smaller banks have kind of begun to find their footing again. And so it'd be interesting to hear from a panel of community banks about kind of how they're dealing with it and how they're helping customers today.
Right.
I'm super excited to get their voices involved too, because over the years, our audience has gone from pure fintech. Remember back, Peter, in 2013? I mean, it was like, we're going to take down the banks, right?
I think we had like two bankers in the room back then. But
they were pretty special people.
Yes.
And now our audience is enormously, I mean, it's filled with bankers, right? And this is just another way that we can get them involved and get them involved from all over the world, right?
So one of the
not
fast
just
growing segments of our audience is bankers, especially, kind of down the scale a little bit. The regional and the community bank has really been, coming to us in significant numbers the last few years.
And I think the community banks are becoming more and more important. And I think in this crisis, particularly when you're looking at the PPP, it was many of the community bankers. I mean, we got our PPP loan through a local community bank, and
when our national bank failed us.
Yes, we had a national Big Four bank, and they did not do very well. They shall remain nameless, but I've been following this very, very closely, and it's the community banks that have saved the day for hundreds of thousands of small businesses. And so this is, the community banks are not dead by any means. They're not, they've really come into their own in recent
which is so great. I mean, Peter, you talk about being a supporter of entrepreneurs. I think we're all very, it's in our blood. I mean, each one of us has an entrepreneur for a dad and grew up in that kind of small business world. And, it's so exciting to see that the winners might be those small. Our community bank has, I think, 450 million of assets. That's not a big bank,
right?
So, I mean, it's neat to see. That's my point.
Okay. Anyway, we're running out of time. I want to get to the nitty gritty here. So, Bo, why don't you tell everybody how to sign up, how much this is going to cost, keeping in mind this is going to be a podcast that's going to launch on May 8th, and the video is going to launch on May 4th, I believe. So tell us a little bit about how people can become part of LendIt Fintech Digital.
Sure. So on May 4th is everyone's first chance to join the community. We are calling everyone who signs up in this first set of days, which is Monday to Friday, founding member. Founding membership is $495 per person. So at the end of that, we go on to standard membership. Price goes up to $14.95, which is the price that we've set for an annual subscription to all the content that we put on at LendIt Fintech Digital. So we think that's a really good deal, the $14.95. Naturally, we want to motivate people to get on board early. And so those founding members are getting $1,000 off, 66% plus or minus off of the full rate. So starts Monday, that founding member window ends on Friday. So you could still become a member later, but it's more expensive and it'll still be worth it. But that's how you do it. And the URL, just to be clear, is digital.lendit.com. You'll be able to find it. Just so it turns out, we're also launching our new website, our refresh website, which we've been also working on for almost a year, maybe more than a year.
I think more than a year.
So
if you think that $495 is a good deal, there is a combo price.
Oh, right.
That if you were to buy a digital subscription with an event ticket for $19.95, you get a ticket to any one of the LendIt events within a calendar year of buying that subscription. And so this is your best deal, the most cost-efficient deal to get yourself into LendIt Fintech USA and digital. Yep. But if you're looking to go to the event and in September, but you want this content, I mean, this is your best deal. And so $495 is a steal. The $19.95 for an event ticket and digital is the best deal that we can give.
Yeah. And keep in mind, the actual price to buy a ticket to our USA event right now is $2,495. So you get $500 off that price, and you get a ticket. And you can use it for our 2020 event or our 2021 event in USA. Yep. You can also use it obviously for Europe or Latin America as well.
Yeah. Screaming deal.
Indeed it is. Okay, well, that just about wraps it up. We have gone over time, but Thanks, guys, and appreciate everybody listening. And we'll see you at LendIt Fintech Digital.
Thanks, Peter. Thanks, Todd.
Thanks, Peter.
Okay.
Cheers. Bye.